very cool. We're going to talk some more about this after the break. We're so happy Pete's with us to explain this, especially tying it to things that we can really understand from history. Us old folkies, me and Patrick, we need that help a little bit. So we'll be back at the Free People Show at freepeopleshow.com after the break, where we'll talk more about Bitcoin with Peter Augelli. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 minutes or so. $6%? 7%? That's a lot of money. I might as well just do it myself. Well, that might be true, if a lot of that money you're paying a real estate broker is going toward outdated methods, unnecessary fancy offices, and overpaying executives for a lifetime of service. But you don't need to go that route. Silver Compass Realty is a full-service real estate brokerage serving all of South Central Wisconsin, and the commission is negotiable. Silver Compass will explain exactly what they're going to do to help you buy or sell a home, how that will help you reach your goals, and stand right beside you every step of the way. They want to be your broker, your expert, even when you're not in the middle of a transaction. Silver Compass Realty, helping you find your way home. Contact them today at silvercompassrealty.com or call 608-361-8608. Silver Compass Realty, helping you find your way home.
Burger House 41 is open at 1860 West Mason in Green Bay. You're invited to indulge in one of life's simplest pleasures, a great burger. We're grilling up 15 fresh signature burgers and have over 30 craft beers for the perfect pairing. Experience Wisconsin's best flavors, including white cheddar cheese curds, a variety of specialty sandwiches, milkshakes, and gourmet frozen custard. Burger House 41 at 1860 West Mason is open at 11 a.m. daily. Taste Wisconsin. Taste amazing.
Would you like to experience being one of the free people who produce their own meat and eggs? PurelyPoultry.com has both the chickens and supplies you need to raise your own poultry.
Would you like pets who produce eggs you can barter with? Your own source of clean meat?
A swan on your pond to make your home strikingly beautiful?
How about some pheasants and quail roaming in your woods for enjoyment? If so, check out PurelyPoultry.com.
Welcome back to the Free People Show, episode 23, where Patrick and I are talking to Pete Augelli, who's educating us on the benefits and the history and the ways that we can understand Bitcoin. So thanks for staying with us, Pete. We're going to have you on for at least one more segment, probably the rest of the show, because this is extremely important to people who love liberty and who not just love liberty, but anyone who suffers from the oppression of the Federal Reserve System in particular, in the international banking system, where they use the ability to produce money and to influence people in that way to do all kinds of terrible things. Pretty much you could probably argue that everybody in the entire world is a victim of the international banking system and the Federal Reserve in particular. So this seems to me Bitcoin, and we use Bitcoin as sort of a catch-all for the other cryptocurrencies as well, in the same way that we use Kleenex to describe facial tissues, et cetera, but a very liberating thing for people. If they're not afraid to use it. So what do you think are the ways where we can really be free of government and the coercive power of government in using Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I think actually if you look at the history of Bitcoin, a lot of the major surges happened along with major political turmoil in different countries. You look at, so Venezuela, Brazil is starting to use it a lot. There were several other countries that we saw a mass move to Bitcoin when there was government destabilization. It was actually phenomenal because for the longest time the U.S. dollar was, if your country was going to go down the drain, people would stock up on the U.S. dollar. That's how Russia tried to offset their oil crisis.
And at that time, the dollar being a stable currency,
correct,
and the reserve currency of the world
right
now, right.
But
that was the impression anyway. Right.
But what we're starting to see, at least in the private investment community, is when there's hints of political destabilization, people are moving to the cryptocurrencies. They're actually using that as their stable base.
And it makes sense because in a country like Venezuela, you're not allowed to trade in dollars. I'm thinking if you've got a country like that that's
Chavez, he probably doesn't want him doing that.
Totally
right?
destabilized, that trading dollars could become
Right.
a black market of its own.
Yeah, although they are, a lot of those countries do try, because I'm pretty sure Venezuela tried to take some steps to make it difficult to get Bitcoin. I know our own country, the IRS does not like cryptocurrencies at all. They've tried to make them very painful.
They don't like anyone using anything but the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a theory, a very strongly held theory, that a lot of the reason that we have certain countries as enemies and have had Libya, Iran, some other places, is that they don't want to use the dollar, that they want to trade their natural resources in some currency, some other currency, or maybe gold. And that's why Muammar Gaddafi was demonized after he'd given up his weapons of mass destruction, when he was behaving relatively well on the world stage, that all of a sudden he decided he doesn't want to deal with the dollar anymore, at least with his government, and all of a sudden now we have to take him out. So I don't know at what point Bitcoin could be a danger, seen as a danger to the international banking system or not. I mean, do you foresee that happening?
I think they already are starting to see it that way, and I think it is already happening. The problem is, it's similar to, remember back in the 2000s with BitTorrents and downloading music, those organizations, especially the record companies, tried their dangdest to stop that culture, and nothing that they did made a dent. I mean, there was jokes going around, because I was really involved in downloading music. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to get struck by lightning than get caught doing it. So nobody really cared. Everybody kept doing it, and Bitcoin's the same way. We mentioned that technically you could track who somebody is, but in practice, the amount of effort that somebody has to expend to figure that out, especially with the blockchain expanding into other uses. So one of the other cryptocurrencies we could touch on is Ethereum. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about them is they did create a cryptocurrency, but if you look at their platform, they actually envision their platform to be used for so much more. Starting your own companies, using them to store and produce contracts. You can literally create a virtual replica. People are creating entire citizenships and entire self-personhoods using blockchain.
That's amazing. That's what enforcing contracts is one of the things I heard about a couple of years ago that blockchain enables, and it's fascinating because that's another way that the government uses its force to control people. Is its relative, corrupt nature of deciding which contracts to enforce and which ones not to enforce, etc. Whereas if it's all online and it's all secure and it's not under the supervision of one corrupt government or group of corrupt governments, then it just enforces. It happens. It just happens. It's free of that process.
Yep.
And it would be superior if what I'm understanding is correct, is that when you say enforce a contract, so let's say that two entities have a contract where one provides a service and the other one compensates them at a set price for that service, and the first party fails to deliver that service, then the system will automatically pull the money back, or will correct the contract error, versus our current system where if somebody violates a contract, you have to spend money to hire a lawyer, take him to court, and then even if you win a judgment, you have to spend money to go and get that money from them.
Exactly, because it exists in one place.
So am I mistaken? Is Ethereum something better than that? I mean, is it more not instantaneous, but more of a immediate rectification of a contract dispute?
Yeah, so at this point, it's not as sophisticated to be able to have rules around it. I think that is where they're shooting. I mean, if you're looking at what they have on their website, they want you to be able to create entire organizations, entire businesses. Where I've seen this contract theory come into play, one of the main things that people used to say government needed to do was to assign, say, a physical property right. Like, Phil, you have the right to renting this building.
Yes.
Well, in America, actually, we're pretty lucky in that those property rights are very well understood. We have very good documentation. A lot of countries, that's not the case. Fraud is prevalent, especially when you're looking at South America and Africa. And what the blockchain can do is, just like a Bitcoin, where it's going to tie the currency ID to that encrypted key that tells you exactly who or the entity that owns it, or really the transaction is what it's storing. It'll have a database that directly ties that property to a specific transaction, aka you having, say, ownership.
So you could
of
have
the building.
entire segments of an economy, whether it's a national economy or international economy or virtual economy, that are immune from corruption. Because what you described, a third world country, if you are the official who's in charge of the records department, you can decide to take someone's land away from them legally because someone came along and paid you a bribe and you changed the paperwork and suddenly somebody else owns
Because one person holds the records.
Right, because one person in government owns the records. But in a system like Ethereum, theoretically, what you're saying then is that possibility wouldn't exist. That there would not be that one person or that
everybody would
group
have,
of people that would have the ability to go in and alter contracts and basically be corrupt.
Correct, because just like if you're looking at, again, some of the messaging software that we have, I don't know who uses Signal here. This is a shameless plug to Signal. It's end-to-end encrypted, so people can't get your information, and WhatsApp too. They've actually put contingencies in place where they don't even know their own encryption. So they can't, if the government came and said, we need you to unencrypt this, they kind of just shrug their shoulders and say, nothing we can do about it. The system encrypts itself. Blockchain works the same way. So yeah, once that transaction is confirmed, nothing can alter that transaction.
That's potentially huge.
Oh,
because the cost of corruption in so many countries, in terms of the drag on an economy, is, aside from just the injustice that occurs through corruption, that if there was a way to eliminate that possibility, technically, maybe we're a long way away from that, but to me that seems huge.
And I think that's inherent in the blockchain technology. So, that's not specific to Ethereum necessarily. That's something in the nature of blockchain itself. So whatever program, whatever platform is using blockchain, it has the capability of doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. The encryption technology itself is outside of blockchain. That's when you're talking about, cyber warfare. Obviously, I always tell, if you're talking about encryption and that's where you want to get, I always tell people to watch for quantum encryption because that, by the nature of the universe, is uncrackable. But if we're talking about the blockchain, it's as good as any encryption technology that we have, and they tend to use incredibly robust encryption technology.
It's better than government encryption. It's better than your bank encryption. It's better than your credit card encryption. It's a better system than all of the systems that we live on right now, that we depend on so heavily.
And we're just unfamiliar with it. That's really the obstacle to it, is people aren't familiar with, they're not familiar with how their own money works, which is problem number one, right? That's why the government's gotten away with massive inflation and the way they tax people and the way they redistribute. And banks, exactly. Fractional reserve, banking, all those sorts of things that their wealth and their efforts are just being drained away on all this, and they don't realize it. They just assume that that's the way things always have been and always will be. Whereas, this is something different. It requires, even with Patrick and myself, who are, somewhat familiar with Bitcoin more and more now, and certainly looking for ways to be more free, it's still a little bit of a leap to look at it, and especially with the price rising, which we'll cover after our break. We're going to go into our bottom of the hour break here. But we're going to keep you around, Pete, if that's all right. We want to talk more about Bitcoin, specifically about, again, more ways that it frees people, but we've been covering some very important ways that it makes people more free, more free from government, more free from individuals cheating, more free from corporations cheating, which is a big concern of people, not necessarily from the right, but from the left as well. So we'll get back to that after the break. You're listening and watching the Free People Show at freepeopleshow.com. We appreciate you staying with us. More Peter Augelli.